Coming in at number 5, we have the Big Grey Man. Known as the Big Grey Man of Ben Macdhu in Scottish folklore, this creature is said to haunt the summit of Ben Macdhu. Although there have been many sightings of the Big Grey Man, few have actually seen the creature with their eyes. Rather bizarrely, a couple of witnesses claim the creature wears a top hat, and whenever he appears, the sound of loud crunching footsteps echo across the mountains. Some hear singing, others ghostly laughter. Although there have been many sightings of the Big Grey Man, few have actually seen the creature with their eyes. This is due to the fact that the Grey Man is apparently more often felt than physically seen. Climbers experience uncontrolled terror, deep despair, and huge negative energy. Not surprisingly, many walkers feel an overwhelming desire to run away. Some have felt themselves pursued by echoing footsteps. Others are hypnotically drawn to the edge of cliffs. Those people who actually have witnessed the creature describe it to be very thin and over 10 feet tall, with dark skin, hair, long arms, and broad shoulders. That being said, most often the creature remains unseen in the God of the Mountains. In 1925, Collie Norman was the first recorded witness of the creature, as he recalls a terrifying experience in the face of Big Grey Man. Collie was a hiking enthusiast, professor, and member of the Royal Geographical Society. He reported that as he was returning to the summit, he was surrounded by mist and began to hear noises of footsteps that were not his. The footsteps sounded as if someone was chasing him, with steps 3 or 4 times the length of his own. Collie became extremely frightened and rushed down the hike to get away from the creature that was supposedly following him. After Collie came out with this story, many other hikers shared similar stories of their own encounters with the Big Grey Man, reporting that they as well heard footsteps following them and felt uneasy and a negative energy in the area. While in 1945, a worker, Peter Densham, reported that he heard strange noises, while the mist began closing in on his location, and with the added feeling of pressure around his neck. The worker fled the scene before anything else could escalate. Even though there have been only a few eyewitnesses, it's safe to say that wherever the Grey Man ventures, he is accompanied by a sense of irrational panic and dread. In at number 4, we have the Black Shuck. Considered the most common urban legend in Britain, we have Black Shuck. You can find the Black Shuck in the counties of East Anglia, lurking in the graveyards, crossroads, or forests. The Black Shuck is described as a large black dog with flaming red eyes. On some accounts, the Black Shuck appears to have one eye in the middle of its forehead. The dog varies in size, though has been compared to a large dog to the size of a horse. However, it is generally described as about the size of a mastiff, with shaggy black fur and glowing red eyes. These beasts were known to suddenly appear without warning, then disappear as quickly as they arrived. One of the most notable reports of Black Shuck is his appearance at the churches of Bungay and Blythburgh in Suffolk. On August 4th, 1577 at Blythburgh, Black Shuck is said to have burst in through the church doors. He ran up the aisle past a large congregation, attacking a man and a boy and causing the church steeple to collapse through the roof. As the dog left, the beast left scorch marks on the north door, which can be seen at the church to this day. The Black Shuck has a mixed reputation. In the earlier days of the legend, the Shuck was known as a negative omen. In its first encounters, it was even said to have eliminated people directly. Today, the Shuck's reputation has received an unlikely makeover. Some modern witnesses, mostly women, have reported that the Shuck acted as a protector and guided them home when they were lost at night. Sometimes referred to as an omen of death, sometimes a more companionable animal, but you might not want to take those chances if you are faced in front of the terrifying beast. In at number 3, we have Beast of Bodmin Moor. The Beast of Bodmin Moor is another old urban legend from Britain. It's known that for 3 decades since 1978, a phantom black cat the size of a puma is seen stalking the moors of Cornwall. The Beast of Bodmin Moor has over 60 sightings of eyewitnesses reporting a black panther-like cat, being 3 to 5 feet long and featuring white eyes. Where there are reports of the beast, there was also a trail of mutilated livestock. The evidence was concrete enough that in 1995 the government ordered an official investigation into the existence of such a beast. The report finally concluded that there was no verifiable evidence of a big cat on Bodmin Moor, although it was careful to state that there was no evidence against it either. Shortly after the report didn't lead anywhere, a small boy found a leopard skull lying on the banks of the River Fowey, thus creating bigger speculation about the beast being real. Sightings continued, and in 1998 there was a video footage released that clearly shows a black cat looking animal that fits the description of the Beast of Bodmin Moor. More recently, in October 2016 near St Austell, there was reported a giant set of paw prints. Some people have reported being chased by the powerful and scary cat-like creature. Others have spotted it in the distance, not quite believing their eyes. eyes. Some believe that the animal is a species of wild cat, though extinct in Britain many years ago, still surviving on the moors of Cornwall. Others blame the paranormal, believing the beast to be a mythical spirit of a creature that roamed Cornwall in the past. In at number 2 we have Man of Mawnan. A remote church in Cornwall is known to be the home of a half-man, half-owl creature that has been terrifying the locals and tourists since the 1920s. Known as the Man of Mawnan Smith, the creature is a human-sized owl with large wings, long claws, and glowing eyes. The first sighting of the Owlman was reported in April 1976, where 2 girls on vacation with their family walked down to the old church. When approaching the remote church, they saw what they described as a terrifying birdman with wings and feathers. The girls were so scared by their encounter with the Owlman that their parents decided to end their vacation early and leave Cornwall immediately. There was another sighting 2 years later. At first, the witnesses thought that someone was playing a trick on them, that it was a person dressed up in a costume. Like other reports, they described an abnormally large birdman, silver grey in colour with feathers. They only realised that it wasn't a trick when they saw the creature fly up into the air and disappear. After it flew away, they said that there was a strange static noise coming from the trees for some time afterwards. There was a further sighting in 1989 and then again 6 years later. The witness this time was an American tourist, and she described the Owlman as being around 5 foot tall with huge claws protruding from its vast wings. The most recent sighting was in September of 2009. It was reported that a young girl named Jessica Wilkins saw the Man of Mawnan for the first time this century. Though with all these sightings near the Mawnan church, the Owlman is still a mystery. Some theorize that the church is standing in the center of an ancient earthworks and has an earth energy line passing through the site. The theory suggests natural earth energy could be connected to the reports of the Owlman, but in any case the unsolved case of the Owlman is still a mystery. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Loch Ness Monster. Taking home in Scotland at Loch Ness River, this might be the most well-known urban legend in Britain. The famous legend of the Loch Ness Monster began to gain attraction in 1933. At the time, a road across the Loch Ness was finished, offering an unobstructed view of the lake. The first recorded sighting was in April of the same year, where a couple recalled seeing an enormous animal. They compared the creature that they witnessed to a dragon or prehistoric creature. After it crossed their car's path, it disappeared into the water. In December 1933, the Daily Mail commissioned Marmaduke Wetherall, a hunter, to locate the sea creature. Along the lake shores, he found large footprints that he believed belonged to a very powerful soft-footed animal about 20 feet long. In all reports, the appearance is generally noticed as the same. Common themes attributed to the monster include a large body with at least one hump, a long arched neck, a small head, and being grey or dark brown colour. The Loch Ness area attracted numerous monster hunters. Over the years, several sonar explorations were undertaken to locate the creature, but none were successful. In addition, numerous photographs allegedly showed the beast, but most were discredited as fake or as depicting other animals or objects. That being said, a satellite image on Apple Maps revealed what appeared to be a large creature around 30 meters long just below the surface of Loch Ness on April 19, 2014. This not only generated the usual hype of claims that it was the Loch Ness Monster, but also served to comfort those who were upset over the earlier speculation that Nessie had disappeared. And to this day, the creature photographed in this image is unidentified. Even though it's not confirmed, with all the reports and witnesses, and the fact that most of the Loch Ness River is still unexplored, it's hard not to believe in the legend of Loch Ness Monster. Coming in at number 5, we have Spriggan of West Penwith. The Spriggan is an urban legend known from Cornish fairy lore, where they are mostly located in West Penwith, Cornwall. They are closely related to pixies, but known to be dangerous and mischievous, whereas pixies are more cheerful and fun-loving, while Spriggans are more spiteful, especially directed at humans in the form of evil tricks. Spriggans are said to be the security force behind the fairy world. Unlike some fairies which serve to treat or trick humans, the Spriggans are said to measure out justice to humans who have unduly crossed fairies. They would dole out punishments, both big and small, to anyone who dared mess too much with the other world. Spriggans were depicted as grotesquely ugly and generally acting as fairy bodyguards. Though usually small, they had the ability to grow to enormous size as a defensive ability. Their strange and creepy appearance also aided the Spriggans in their aim to be feared by those who saw them. It was believed that the Spriggans haunt lonely places such as castle ruins, burrows, certain standing stones, and windswept crags. Spriggans were thought to be the source of such misfortunes as unhealthy crops, bad weather, and illness, especially in a time when the mechanics of such things were not fully understood. murdered. They were also said to be busy thieves targeting those who offended them. They are known to steal small children and replace them with their own kind, leaving behind one of their own ugly large-headed children. Quote, one of their common traits was to lead lonely travelers into swamps or near dangerous and crumbling cliffs, a factor they share in common with the will-o'-the-wisp and the pixies, although the pixies would not lead people to dangerous places. If you want to avoid being punished by the Spriggans, the easiest thing you can do is make sure not to offend any type of fairy folk in any way. The second thing you can do, avoid tempting them. Even if you haven't initially done something to offend their fairy folk, the Spriggans may still be tempted to enact a little pre-revenge, just in case you were to wrong the fairy folk. In at number 4 we have the Pendle Witches. Pendle Hill was once the home of wolves and wild boar. It is also the location of Britain's biggest witchcraft trial that took place over 400 years ago. The Pendle Witches lived in the early 1600s at a time of religion and superstition. Catholics and those suspected of witchcraft came under more scrutiny than ever during this time, and the king brought in the fatal penalty for those found guilty of witchcraft. The 12 Pendle Witches, all local women, while 6 of the Pendle Witches came from one of 2 families, were charged with the murders of 10 people by the use of witchcraft. Perhaps the most notorious witch trial of the 17th century, the legend of the Pendle Witches is one of the many dark tales of imprisonment and execution at Lancaster Castle. 1 woman died while held in custody, 11 went to trial, 1 was tried and found guilty at York, and the other 10 were tried at Lancaster. Only 1 was found not guilty. The story began with an altercation between one of the accused, Alison Device, and a peddler John Law. Alison, either travelling or begging on the road to Trawden Forest, passed John Law and asked him for some pins. He refused and Alison cursed him. It was a short while after this that John Law suffered a stroke, for which he blamed Alison and her powers. The deaths of the 4 other villagers that had occurred years before the trial were raised and the blame laid on the witchcraft performed by another suspected witch in the area. Coming in at number 3 we have Catchy. The Catchy is known to be a ghost-like cat covered in all black fur, besides a small white spot on its chest. This creature haunts the Scottish Highlands. The size of the Catchy is said to be close to the size of a large dog. One of the theories about the Catchy suggests that they aren't fairies but are actually witches that have the ability to transform back and forth between human forms and cat form. This however could only be done 9 times, with the final transformation into the cat being permanent. This is often referenced as the origin for the concept of cats having 9 lives. Those in the Highlands did not trust the Catchy because they believed that these creatures are soul thieves. The common belief was that the Catchy could pass over the corpse of the dead prior to burial and steal the soul from someone before the gods had claimed it. Special watches were set up to guard the dead, known as Fail Vadalak, which means late wake. Those on this watch would attempt to keep the Catchy away from the room containing the corpse by distracting it in a variety of methods, such as using catnip, riddles, games, and music. The Catchy was believed to be fond of warmth, and therefore fires were never lit near the bodies so that they were not attracted to the area. The Catchy was feared due to the belief that it was a harbinger of death, much like the Grim Reaper. Although mostly a silent hunter, the Catchy would sometimes let out 3 blood-curdling howls that could be heard from miles around. Those that heard the howls would need to reach a place of safety before the 3rd howl, or they would be overcome with fear and would die from sheer terror. Coming in at number 2 we have Black Dog, a bunting nook. Don't be fooled, this isn't just an ordinary suburban dog. The black dog of Burning Nook has been described to have dark black fur, snarling fangs, black eyes, and great in size. Spotted by numerous residents and several police officers over the years, the creature has also been reported as extremely large, with huge devilish saucer-like eyes. The creature haunts the road in Bunting Nook, Naunton, according to local legend, as the huge black dog is known to appear in an instant in front of people's cars. From there it targets men, as the dog makes the car stall before preying on the passenger. The black dog legends are often seen as an omen, warning of the imminent death of the person who sees it, or of a close family member, and certain folklorists hold that the creatures patrol ley lines, sources of mysterious energy that threads around the world. But Sheffield is not the only part of Yorkshire to have had sightings of the mysterious creature, but true or fake, the demon dog is one of Sheffield's scariest apparitions. According to reports though, it hasn't been seen since 2007, so you might be safe from this one. Or not, or you could die tomorrow. We could all die tomorrow. And finally, in at number 1, we have Hairy Hands of Dartmoor. The Hairy Hands of Dartmoor is a ghost story that focuses on a stretch of road which supposedly had a high number of accidents during the early 20th century. The suggested cause for the loss of control of these vehicles was given to be supernatural activity interfering with the vehicles. According to the stories, the hands appear suddenly, seize the steering wheel of a car or the handlebars of a motorcycle, and then force the victim off the road. In these early cases, the hands are described as being invisible. To further back up this claim, since around 1910, drivers and cyclists had allegedly been reporting unusual accidents, the victims reporting that their vehicle had swerved violently and steered off the side of the road. Some described that it was as if something had wrenched the vehicle out of their control. This could happen to cars, motor coaches, cyclists, and even pony and traps. In June of 1921, Dr. E.H. Helby, who was at the time serving as the medical officer nearby, lost control of his motorcycle and sidecar. In the sidecar were seated his two children, who survived. He had just about enough time to warn the children to jump before he was thrown from his bike and met his final fate. His children related that as he shouted at them to get to safety, he was fighting against an invisible force in his efforts to control the bike. On August 26th of the same year, a British Army captain lost control of his motorcycle and was thrown off as well. He was known to be a very experienced rider. In response to questioning him, the captain stated that it was not his fault, and believe it or not, something drove him off the road. A pair of hairy hands closed over his. He apparently felt them as plainly as ever. He fought them for all he was worth, but they were too strong for him. They forced the machine into the turf at the edge of the road. Further proof of the hands can be found in Michael Williams' 2003 book Supernatural Dartmoor, where the author was told by journalist Rufus Endell that he was driving near Postbridge when a pair of hands gripped the driving wheel and he had to fight for control. When he successfully avoided crashing his car, the hands disappeared. Rufus asked that the story not be published until after his death, so we don't have the opportunity to further check out the report. In at number 5, we have the Beast of Hackney Marshes. This legend dates back to 1981, when 4 kids were crossing the marshes on a winter's morning. It is said that they happened upon, I quote, a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. Naturally, people began to assume that this was some kind of hideous monster. It remained a legend going forward, but wasn't spotted again until 2012, when it was captured on camera. Helen Murray, a university student, was out for a stroll near the dense woodland area when she said she was stopped in her tracks by an unknown animal, which she stated was larger than a person and covered in shaggy black fur. I quote, I tried to stay calm as I wasn't sure what kind of animal it was or if it was even alive. I had my phone ready to call 999, then the creature moved. Somehow I managed to take a couple of pictures before I ran. I managed to get away but was scared half to death. Now, she didn't contact the police because she feared they wouldn't believe her. However, the story certainly revived memories of the unexplained sighting that occurred in 81. Officers have stated that they believe neither of these sightings were hoaxes, and that 2 bear carcasses had previously been found nearby in the River Lee, and to this day it remains a mystery how they even got there. So, were the bears killed by this creature? Were the bears the creature? We don't have bears in England, so stumped. In at number 4, the Killer Pool in Epping Forest. Epping Forest is a 2,400 hectare area of ancient woodland between Epping in Essex and Forest Gate in Greater London. Over 100 lakes and ponds are found in the forest. However, there is only one that is referred to as the Killer or Suicide Pool. This legend grew rapidly in popularity after Irish author Elliot O'Donnell wrote about it in his book Haunted Britain, stating that there is a pool in Epping Forest that is home to unearthly presences, some miserable and some evil. Now, there is one story about the pool that goes as follows. Around 300 years ago, a couple engaged in a forbidden relationship, meeting secretly at the pond in the forest. However, the girl's father found out about the relationship and in a fit of anger he killed her at the pool. After learning about his girlfriend's death, the lover committed suicide at the very same spot. Following these tragic events, no birds were heard and no animals were ever seen in that area again. The water also became dank, and not dank in a good way, bad dank. On top of that, it is said that people with no inclination went on to commit suicide there, including a woman in 1887 and a young servant, Emma Morgan, who killed herself and her child. Jumping forward to 1959, a competition in a magazine was held to find the exact location of the pool. One writer claimed to know but refused to reveal the details, stating that the place was evil beyond measure. I quote, "The suicide pool is deep in the heart of the forest, far from any road. It is dank, evil and malignant, with an atmosphere unpleasant beyond description. It doubt if the sunshine ever penetrates through the surrounding trees. If it did, it would never lighten the black waters." In at number 3, we have the Ghost of the Grey Lady and Longleat House. Longleat House is an English stately home and the seat of the Marquis of Bath. The house was originally built by Sir John Tyne and was designed mainly by Robert Smithson after Longleat Priory was destroyed by fire in 1567. It took almost 12 years to complete and is often regarded as one of the finest examples of Elizabethan architecture in Britain. Britain. Sounds magical, right? Well, it has a dark side, one of deceit and murder. It all began back in 1733, when Lady Louisa married Viscount Weymouth, who owned the Longley estate. Louisa moved into the home with him, bringing with her a number of her own servants. It was said that she was fond of one of her footmen, who she described as loyal and true. Now, this favoritism wasn't taken well among the other servants, and out of jealousy they told Viscount Weymouth that the footman was having an affair with Louisa, which of course wasn't true. Now, this is where the story gets a little blurry. Some say Weymouth paid someone to push the footman down the stairs, while others say he did it himself. Either way, the footman broke his neck and his body was buried in the cellar. This took a toll on Lady Louisa, who developed pneumonia, which resulted in her death at the young age of 22. According to visitors of Longleat House, you can find a lady dressed in grey creeping along the house's corridors, especially close to the library where the footman died. Coming in at number 2, we have the Beast of Bodmin Moor. The Beast of Bodmin Moor is a phantom cat purported to live in Cornwall, England. The creature is said to be panther-like and black-furred, with it stalking around Bodmin Moor killing livestock. Sightings of the beast were reported back in 1978 after mutilated slain livestock were found in the area. Some people propose that the beast had escaped from a zoo, and as it was illegal to own one privately, the former owner could not report it to the police. It has been claimed that animal trainer Mary Chipperfield had released 3 pumas into the wild following the closure of her Plymouth Zoo in 1978, and perhaps this is what gave rise to rumours of the beast. Jumping forward to 1995, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food conducted an official investigation, with there being no verifiable evidence of exotic felines loose in Britain, and that instead the livestock could have been killed by indigenous species. However, less than a week after the government report, a boy was walking by the River Fowey when he discovered a large cat skull, measuring about 4 inches long by 7 inches wide. The skull was lacking its lower jaw, but possessed 3 sharp, prominent canines that suggest it may have been a leopard. It was immediately sent to the Natural History Museum in London for verification, with them determining that it was a genuine skull from a young male leopard. And finally, in at number 1, we have Spring-Heeled Jack. Originating from Victoria-era Britain, Spring-Heeled Jack is a character from urban legend that was first supposedly sighted back in 1837. However, over the years more frequent tales have emerged. His name is said to come from his ability to leap over great distances and heights. Not too shabby. The very first sighting of Spring-Heeled Jack came in October of 1837, when a woman named Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill when a tall-coated man leapt from the building into the street. He then grabbed her with his metal claws and kissed her before tearing at her clothes. After her screams were heard, he fled the scene, leaping back into the building he came from. Following the encounter, more accounts occurred, with the most notable being the Alsop case. The Alsop case was one of the most widespread stories about Jack, with it being published in several newspapers. Jane Alsop recalls the moments when she was attacked, stating, "I answered the door of my father's house to a man claiming to be a police officer, who told me to bring a light, claiming, 'We have caught Spring-Heeled Jack here in the lane.' I brought the person a candle and noticed that he wore a large cloak. The moment I had handed him the candle, however, he threw off the cloak and presented a most hideous and frightful appearance, vomiting blue and white flame from his mouth while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. She also reported that he wore a large helmet and that his clothing, which appeared tight-fitting, resembled white oilskin. No one was ever caught and identified as Spring-Heeled Jack, which of course led to numerous theories of his nature and identity. Skeptical investigators have dismissed these stories though and claim Spring-Heeled Jack is a product of mass hysteria, which developed around various stories of a boogeyman and devil.